I thought was really interesting as an audiologist, because you open to this scene of Bradley Cooper's character on stage, and you hear his high-pitched tinnitus there, and then you hear all of the noise from the crowd because he's playing a show in the opening scene. So you hear the crowd, and then all of a sudden you hear the amp in the background turn on where he starts to play, and it just hits you with all of this sound. And I thought that was a great representation of what it would have really been like to have been there. And so at certain times during the movie, you hear that tinnitus noise, and it's just a high-pitched, steady noise. And
what did it make you feel? Because in the movies, they're going after an emotional response. What did you feel?
And to me, it was eye-opening to realize that, like, it just is on top of everything else, and it's this kind of annoying noise that just is constant. And that's what I really took away from it. Was.
Do you think so you physically think they portrayed it properly in the movie?
Yes. Yeah, because I know when I get my tinnitus, that's pretty much exactly what it sounds like. It's just a noise that's there, and you can hear everything else on top of it, but it's just constant. So I thought that was a great representation of at least my personal experience with tinnitus.
How did Bradley Cooper, how did he deal with it throughout the movie?
He seemed not to deal with it very well throughout the movie.
Okay.
It was kind of something there that they talked about a few times, but he certainly wasn't taking anyone's helpful advice on ways to deal with it. He was doing quite a few things that would exacerbate it and make it worse.
Can you give examples without spoiling the movie?
So without well, one of the big things is the alcohol. We know that alcohol can make that tinnitus seem worse. And throughout the whole movie, he's a heavy alcoholic. So that certainly played a big part in that. There's also a scene where his audiologist tells him that he has a high-frequency hearing loss and that he needs to start wearing in-ear monitors on stage. And then they cut to a scene where his brother's holding these in-ear monitors and tells him he has to wear them, and he basically says he's just not going to do it. So he's, exacerbating the hearing loss that way as well with all of the noise exposure, and just keeps turning the amps up higher so you can hear it.
You probably see this just as much as I do. That's very common with musicians. They don't want anything in their ears because it messes up the frequency response. It doesn't sound natural to them. So how did he respond in the movie? So he wouldn't wear them.
Yeah, he just kind of, threw a little bit of a fit about it, yelled about it, and said, well, we just need to turn these things up louder.
Okay.
So, then you see him in shows later on where he's just continuing to turn those amps up louder and louder.
Yeah. We know better, right?
Which we know better. And the whole point was that the in-ear monitors are going to help protect him from some of the crowd noise, as well as be able to give him a little bit more of those sounds where he's missing them.
Yeah. That makes sense. From what I'm gathering, again, I've not seen the movie, but it seems like the emotional portrayal of this is the tinnitus is overwhelming, the hearing loss is something he's willing to deal with, but maybe he doesn't necessarily realize the negative emotional impact it's having on him.
Well, and it seemed to me like there was a lot going on in his life. So it wasn't just the hearing loss or the tinnitus. It was a whole downward spiral of a lot of things. But certainly being an audiologist and knowing what we know, the fact that he's got that hearing loss and that tinnitus is certainly negatively affecting his music career and his ability to, keeps saying things like, well, I'm just not hearing the music that way. And that certainly could be a big part of that hearing loss and tinnitus.
With tinnitus, I think it's a good correlation with the emotional effect that you're explaining here, because what happens is when people hear it, number one, they've been told that there's nothing we can do about tinnitus, and they understand, well, I'm just going to have to live with it, and that can be depressing. That can be devastating to a lot of people, especially when you have no hope. We know better, though. There is hope.
Yeah.
There's a lot that you can do for tinnitus. While we might not be able to completely get rid of it, we can still help people achieve relief from that tinnitus, whether it be through microcurrent point stimulation or cognitive behavior therapies like tinnitus retraining therapy or progressive tinnitus management. We have all these tools available to us so that we can educate people about what tinnitus truly is, and then teach them how to manage that reaction so that it's not affecting their life in a negative way. And hearing loss is the same way. I mean, if he were to show up in our office and he had a high frequency hearing loss, what's the first thing you would do?
Talk to him about those hearing aids and the fact that we can help the tinnitus sometimes by just getting a hearing aid. Not always, but sometimes. And certainly get him hearing those sounds a little bit better. And the really nice thing about our hearing aids now is we even have some ability to still give that nice even frequency response with a music program so that we're not truly distorting any of those sounds for our musicians.
I think it would also be imperative to explain to him the value of keeping the hearing that he has in optimal conditions, so protecting the ears.